right, welcome everybody. Hey, come on by here, settle in, get your pencils, get your brushes. We're using flat brushes today. Get your flat brushes, paints. We're going to do a beautiful cityscape. We're going to do gorgeous buildings here. We're going to have a gorgeous feel of light, of atmosphere, some smog, city buildings, the distant lights of the buildings in the distance, the middle tones, the middle tonal values of the middle distance, and the foreground, the beautiful darks of the foreground buildings here, with all the details of the windows, the water towers on top of the buildings, the windows themselves, the gorgeous details in the windows, the grills in the windows, the fine details on the tops of the roofs. All here on this video. Settle in, have fun. We're going to do the pencil drawing next, and then we'll move right on to the painting. Hope you'll subscribe right now. We're here making videos every week. At least 1 to 2 videos every week. All types of content we have here on this channel. All watercolor, all the time, all exciting. Come on by. Hit the subscribe button. Also hit the notification bell next to it. This way you know exactly when the video comes out. When we do another video, you can check it out. You can say, hey, I like that video. Looks good. The painting looks good. I'm going to try it. Or maybe I'll wait for the next one next week. At least you know when the videos come out. You can try it out, check it out. And we're going to get started in just a second. I hope you'll have fun with this. This is a great beginner's type technique with the glazing technique, as you'll see. And we're going to go step by step and show you every step of the way how to do this painting. Okay? Come on. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Okay, so we're getting right into it here. We're going to start out. We're starting our drawing, our pencil drawing, and basically we have our tape. We always work with our border tape. We have some artist tape around, some really top quality artist tape around the border of our painting. This is about a, what are we going to have here? This is a 9 by about 13 or 14, 9-inch by 14-inch Fabriano rough paper, extra white, Artistico paper, beautiful paper to work on. For watercolor artists, you'll really love the Fabriano paper. It's really versatile. You can do any type of painting on it, figure work, landscapes, seascapes, flower work, any type of painting. You're always going to have good results with the Fabriano paper. I also use Arches, but Fabriano I think is my real favorite because it just really, you can do anything on it. You can always put this paper out on your palette, on your easel or on your workstation, and you're going to have just a great time painting on it. It's a beautiful paper. It works great with all kinds of techniques. Arches is also a great paper, but you sometimes have some challenges with different things. So Arches and Fabriano, those are my two favorites. And let's continue on here. So now what do we have here? We're doing, of course, we're doing a cityscape. We're doing a beautiful cityscape. This is for like a beginner type artist. You know, you don't want to be bogged down with all concerns about colors and color schemes and fancy drawings and all that kind of stuff. You just want to get a decent painting done. This is why you came to my channel here. And that's why I always say, hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, you better subscribe to my channel. This way you can get all the up-to-date watercolor information that's going to help you paint better as a watercolor artist. We all need help with watercolor paintings. Myself, when I first started, I had a lot of trouble with watercolor painting. It's not an easy medium to paint with. So let me take my 15 to 20 years experience and give it to you now and on all my videos. If you subscribe, Just below, you hit the subscribe button. If you hit the notification bell right next to it, you'll be alerted right away when my videos come out this week and check them out right away. Hey, if you like it, watch it. If not, no worries. Next week's another week. We make videos every week. Okay, so we're getting back into this here. And basically, we're using our artist tape. We have our Fabriano paper. We have our layout of our paper and our design of our painting, basically working on a 1-inch principle. If we're going to say this is 1 inch, not that this is 1 inch, this is obviously a 14 by 9 inch watercolor sheet. But if we're to say, hypothetically, this is 1 inch, if we go 1/2 inch, which is center, so we say the 1/2 inch mark here is our center mark of the page. If we go to 5/8 of an inch, in between 3/4 and half, that's our golden mean. That's a beautiful, pleasant, pleasing place to place things on your painting. It's not quite center, and it's not too far off to one side. It's sort of in the center, but a little off a little bit, which looks better. It kind of just is a more pleasing look. And all the great master artists throughout history, going back to the earliest master artists in time, have always agreed that this is a very beautiful and pleasing place that we would place objects in our painting, which are going to look just great. So we're not going to argue with history and all of the thousands upon thousands of artists out there, the great master artists. We're going to take their word for it and know that approximately 5/8 across a page, if we're working with a 1 inch scale, 1/2 inch center, 5/8, that's going to look very pleasing versus putting it right in the center. The center looks good too, I will agree. There's other very history also. There's different thoughts. Some people will say that the center of the page is more exciting, more pleasing, more pleasant. So you can take either approach. That's fine. I like working here on the golden mean, so I'm going to take this approach. This is the foreground. We're talking about foreground, middle ground, and distance. So we have the foreground that's closest to us. So if we're standing at let's say we're inside of a building in the city, a condominium, an apartment house, we're looking out our window and we're looking out into the city buildings. The foreground is our closest areas that are right up close to us. And then as we go into the middle distance, that's a little further out. And then our most distance in our drawing and painting, that's going to be the furthest point that we can see in this composition. So let's just focus on those few things. Where we're going to put our subject matter, either center or a little off center, the golden mean. And then we have the foreground, the middle distance, and the far distance. So we're going to do our large size skyscraper here on the golden mean. Then we're going to do another building. And we're going to call this the foreground as well. And then maybe this one here. We'll put an interesting water tank on top of We'll put a water tank on top of our rooftop, and then we have a penthouse over here, and then another penthouse up here. And we're going to have some fun with this. All right, so this is our foreground. This apartment building here, this skyscraper here. This might be middle distance. So we'll change our plan around as we go, but remember, this painting is for fun. This is for like beginners. You don't want to have too much to worry about. Let's just say this is our foreground. This is our middle distance. And since this is our foreground, let's make another let's make another building here in the foreground. This one is more, this is another building here. we want to scale this correctly. We want to keep the scale the same as this. So let's put another water tank down here on this building. And since we're calling this the foreground, the first closest buildings to us, let's keep these the same size. And that'll really be helpful because that'll keep the scale looking pleasing. Like that. And like that. Again, quick, simple. We're not doing anything too exacting here. A water tank on top of the penthouse of this building, and the same up here, the top of this building, penthouse. Maybe we have some interesting features on these buildings. You never know. A little couple. You want to have some interesting things going on your paintings. Little marks and things. You don't want to have everything just looking bland. So we have our cornice of the building on the top of the building. This one here is more plain. Just if you just get down these basic blocks, you're fine. Blocks, just blocks, squares, rectangles, 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 rectangle, rectangle. There we go. We're getting it in good shape here. And we make let's make lots of rectangles and squares and all interesting things going on in the city all the time. Great architecture, just an amazing places to be in the cities where there's all the great architecture and all the great masters that created all the designs of all these buildings. And we have our foreground here again, this building and this building. Middle distance, we have a large skyscraper here. Okay, and then middle distance, let's do some more middle distance here. Okay, so you can call these by foreground, middle distance, and distance. So you can say here, foreground, you can make these marks, they'll disappear once you paint. Foreground, foreground, middle distance. Just super lightly put that letter, F for foreground, M for middle distance, and D for distance, the far distance. D is for far distance. Okay, so now middle distance. Okay, now we're going to get into some far distance stuff. A little bit of an eraser here, kneaded eraser, just to, we're going to get a more of a pointy style building in the distance, the D, the distance here. So this is the distance, and this here too. So let's keep track of our buildings. We're not going to do too much more as far as buildings. We have a lot. Okay, middle distance. Okay, and then distance here. Again, we'll do maybe we'll do far distance here. D, D, D. All right, so we'll keep track of everything. D, distant. And you're going to see why we're doing this. That's why I'm going to explain why we're putting these letters on here, because it's going to really be helpful as we move forward in our painting here and our design. So these are all distance, distance, distance. Good there. Then we have maybe one like this. We have a couple different shape buildings. We don't want them all the same shape. And this one here is like so, and then maybe another one like this. Like that. Distance, distant, distant. All right, that's good. All right, now you see the drawing here, and I'm hoping you can see the pencil marks. I will make them a little darker. Okay, middle distance, foreground, okay, middle distance, and we're doing some irregular shapes here. Mostly we're doing squares and rectangles for our shapes, but we have some pointy pyramid, similar to pyramids, trapezoidal shapes, trapezoids here and there, some pyramid type shapes, but mostly all of our shapes are going to be squares and rectangles. We're going to do a lot of windows, which are going to be like rectangles and squares, but this is basically hopefully you can see we have all the pencil marks here. And then as we paint, we'll put in more detail. So we're going to have a lot of more detail than this exact pencil drawing, but we'll do that with the brushes, if that makes sense. So once you get your basic layout with your pencil marks, you're home free. Then when you get in there with the paints and you're painting and you're feeling confident, you can start putting in more details with your brushes in your paint. Okay, all right, perfect time to take a break. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We have lots of fun here every week on my channel. We do all types of watercolors, so you're going to be learning all types of techniques, processes. You're going to learn the fundamentals all the time. I cover the fundamentals of watercolor, so you're always going to learn the basics and the fundamentals week after week, and that will help you build from there onto other things. And then we share other types of paintings and styles and techniques, so that you can also branch out and find your style that you like, that you want to paint. Everyone wants to find their own style, I believe, and so if I share a lot of different styles and techniques, I think you'll be able to find your own niche that you like. So let's continue on in just a minute. We're going to start painting now. We have our basic pencil drawing down, and we'll continue on with our painting in just a few minutes, and we'll see you just in a minute. Okay, we just took a quick break. Got to take some breaks here and there. Keep your concentration level really keen and strong. Taking breaks is great. You can step back and look at your painting and kind of, before you start in again, you can look at it and say, okay, what can I do different? What can I do better? Can I change my game plan a little bit? What is my game plan going in? Taking breaks is great. You really can evaluate before you go back in again and start doing some more washes and some more work on your paintings. But some of you, I know you know your game plan. You're the artist anyway. Does that make sense? You're the artist. You know your game plan. You know what you're capable of. Some people I know don't need breaks. You can just keep working and working and working, and that's fine. Here, I'm just going to show you a quick little smattering of brushes I'm going to use. This painting, I'm going to use all square brushes, all flat brushes. So we have a Hake brush, a Ron Hansen Hake brush here. I have another brush here. It's just like a regular brush I got at the art store. Really very stiff bristles, so this is more of a kind of a one-off brush. I think this is goat hair on this one. I have some synthetics here, some synthetic flat brushes, mostly synthetic. This one might be a natural hair brush. This one here is a natural hair brush. This one here is synthetic. This is a Robert Simmons. This is a Recab Robert Simmons, Ron Ranson. This one here has no labels, so I'm not going to worry about that one. This one I believe is a Sterling Edwards flat brush. And this one here is a Blick Studio 1/2 inch square brush. And this is synthetic. And this is a goat hair brush, 1.5 inch. So with all these flat brushes here, we have plenty of shapes that we can create in our painting here, our cityscape. So if you can bring a lot of different flat brushes, I'm sure many of you have a lot of these brushes laying around. Gather them up, find them. They're somewhere. They're somewhere. They're in the drawers or in the bins. They're somewhere. Find them. Find your flat brushes. Get them out. If you don't use them, maybe you use them all the time. But these are great. Find any flat brushes you have, paint brushes even too. If you're gonna, I was thinking of going down to the basement and finding some flat brushes I paint the walls with here, but I don't think I have to. I have enough art brushes that I can. If I was doing a large painting though, I would probably use some of those brushes that we have that we paint the walls and trim with in the house. I would use those if I'm doing a really large painting. But this one here is basically like a 10 by 14. So it's like a mid-sized painting, not too large. So we'll use these smaller brushes. I'll put these over here on the side, and you'll see as we go, we're going to use all of these, hopefully all of these. Okay, now the first brush we'll use the Hake brush, the Ron Ranson Hake brush. Great brush to have. We're going to make our first wash, which is going to be our distant wash, which we'll put on the whole page. We're going to do glazings here. This is a glazing approach. Glazing. We're going to do some cobalt blue and alizarin crimson up here. So alizarin crimson, cobalt blue. Maybe we're going to rely on our alizarin crimson first, and let's do that. Let's just go across. Let's just cover the whole page. Alizarin crimson with a little bit of the cobalt blue for a nice violet color to cover the whole page. This is our first wash. This is the most simple part of the painting. And we're going to take a break. Can you believe that? How easy is that? Okay, we got our pencil drawing done. You saw that. That took some time. We had to lay things out. We had to get our marks on our paper and kind of think about it a little bit and lay things out. But that's important. Maybe we'll take some raw sienna. We'll also put some raw sienna in that while we have time. We only have so much time. Once you put that paint on the paper, time is ticking. You cannot keep doing this over and over. One or two little go back in there is all you can do. So, all right, you saw what I did. And that's it. Perfect. We're going to let this dry. Once this dries, we'll come back and we'll do our second glazing, which is going to be our middle distance. So we're going to work from light to dark. Distant. So our distant portions of the painting are obviously going to be the lightest washes, which we just did. A light wash, you can see that's lots of water, not as much paint. A lot more water, less paint. We get the whole page, the whole painting covered. Maybe at the bottom here we just lift up, we drag across a tissue just to lift up some of that water and paint flowing down like that. And then once we have our first glazing done, then we're going to go over and do a second glazing, which is a little bit darker in tonal value. So it's going to be a little darker. That'll be our middle distance, which will be our middle distance and distance we're going to have as our next wash on top of this one. But we have to let this one completely dry first. That's the key. When you're doing glazings like this, that's the one thing you remember when you're doing this style of a painting. You have to let each glazing dry 100% as you're going. If you try to now to go in and start doing other washes on top of this while the water is still wet on top of your paper, it's going to look terrible. It's going to, all the colors are just going to go flowing and ballooning and cauliflowers and all kinds of crazy looking unpleasant splotches on your painting. We don't want that. We want to make sure we have a completely dry first wash. So get your first glazing on, really light, a little bit of paint, lots of water, let it dry. And we used 3 colors. We used alizarin crimson, cobalt blue, and we used raw sienna. Those were the 3 colors we used. So that's easy to remember. Just 3 colors: alizarin crimson, cobalt blue, raw sienna. Get that all on there. Let it dry 100% completely. You can use a blow dryer to dry it off, but it's got to be completely dry before you start your next wash. That's real key. That's the key to this painting, letting the washes dry. Okay, so we'll come right back and we'll start our second glazing. All right, we're back and we're going to be doing our second glazing. And here you can see the wash dried off pretty light, actually. So once you do that first wash, you'll notice that it does dry pretty light. So we have a nice first glazing that's light. And now we're going to go and we're going to start to work on our second glazing, which will be the middle distance and the far distance, actually. So we're going to work on the far distance and the middle distance. I think we can do those two as we work forward in the painting. So we're working from the back of the painting forward this way. So if you can imagine, we're trying to work from the back lighter washes forward to the darker washes. So the last washes are going to be our darkest washes. So again, we broke out our various square brushes, flat brushes. So I'll be using those, and I might be using any combination of these. I really don't know what I'm going to do. I'm actually improvising here. Improvising's good. Does that make sense? Improvising's good. As watercolor artists, you should have a fun time improvising, trying different things. This is a good beginner's style watercolor. We just drew some buildings in here. You can even make it more simple than this. So you can make your buildings more simplified. I've kind of gotten into some various shapes. You can just stick with rectangles and squares. You don't have to get into some of these pointier shapes, the trapezoids and pyramid shapes and things like that. That's up to you. But let's see how it goes. We're going to start working our way forward from the back of the painting. Let's get going. I'll put my brushes on the side here. Maybe we'll go with a medium-sized brush here. Okay, now we're going to stick with our 3 color variations. We have alizarin crimson. We have cobalt blue. We'll mix in some cerulean blue with that. And then we have some warm colors. We have the raw sienna, raw umber. And then we just remember the more distant colors will be more cooler, And as we come forward, we'll use more of the warmer colors. So we just remember that. The distance is more cool. All right, so now when you do the cooler colors in the middle distance, you can pretty much put those colors in the entire painting for all your buildings. So you'll see here, I'm going to take those cooler colors and mix up a little bit of cooler colors. And you can go right over in essence, the fun part about glazing technique is you can paint over the foreground. You can paint over the foreground washes because they're going to be darker. But you could leave some lights as you go with your foreground and your middle distance. You could blot out some colors with your tissues. You can see I'm using my flat brush to get the squared shapes of the buildings. And this looks good. Doing the vertical strokes. So you can see how I'm doing vertical strokes here. Everything is looking vertical. I follow my pencil lines there. I pick up a little bit of raw sienna as I go into the blue, but I'm using mostly cool colors, blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue. Raw sienna's here, mixing a little bit of raw sienna just to give it a little bit of a... This is the foreground, this building here. But really, you just simplify this painting here. You're just doing rectangles and building shapes, and you can see how I just follow my pencil drawing. There's various rectangular shapes here and there. We have our, I'll use a smaller brush for those water towers. But this is pretty good. This looks like it's coming along nicely. There is some... There's some more details on the top of this middle distance tower here, this large skyscraper here. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let's shift to a smaller brush just to get the water tank here. And we can also get in some fine details with a needlepoint brush, because this is, we don't want to go too thick with lines where we might get it's not going to look correct. So this looks better. And I smudged a little bit over here on the right with my hand, no big deal. I just use a damp brush. And all right, so we are really, at this point, we're looking good. We have our distant colors, our distant wash, which consisted of very light washes, as you can see. I'm using my needlepoint brush to get a little more This would be a radio tower on top of this building here. So we have a large antenna that goes on top of various antennas on the peak of this building, the pinnacle of this building. We have large antennas on there that could be radio stations and TV, cellular, all types of wireless transmissions from this large antenna array on top of this building here. There's some more antennas on top of this building, which is the same kind of thing. There's always antennas for communications and radio and television on the tops of large buildings that are high up in the air. This way they can broadcast far and wide. And we'll maybe we can do some details here in these distant buildings. Better to do it now. We have the time. We can do that. So here that might be distant buildings over here. Here, this building is going to be our building that's very close to us, our foreground here. This one here too as well. This is a middle distance building. Let's work on this one a little bit. Let's do our small, we're using a small flat brush here. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to get our water tower over here. The paper's a little damp, so it may not be as this might be a little darker. And as we do these small shapes and forms, we're just having fun. This is not a science or anything like that, or we can start making some window shapes here. Now, with this wash, that was our second glazing we did, which is the distant colors and the middle distant colors. we should let this dry somewhat. We might want to come back and first we would let this dry, so let's take another break. That would be the best way to go, is to take another break. We'll take another break, and then as this dries, all these, medium tonal values of all these buildings, we let that dry, and then as that dries, we'll come forward and we'll do our foreground buildings, which are the darker darks of the picture. And once we start getting our darker darks in the foreground here, then we can go back in and start putting in some other medium tonal values within our buildings. And the reason I say that is once you get your darker darks in the foreground, after we let this dry, then we'll be able to kind of better gauge the medium tonal values as we go in and do the other details of these distant buildings and medium distant buildings. So in essence, we're going to work from, again, the back of the painting, the lightest lights, forward to the lightest lights. Now we're getting lightest lights, medium tones now, the medium tonal values. Now next, we're going to let this completely dry. Then we're going to come in and get really the dark darks. And once we get the dark darks in, then we can go back and also work in some other medium tonal values within this painting. Not to confuse anything, but this is basically how we want to work. We want to sort of get the really light lights as we did, the whole wash, put in our medium tonal values here. We got that all done. And then once that's done, we let this dry. So that's our second glazing, our medium tonal values here, completely dry. Let's let that dry. Now the third glazing will be the darkest darks. And once we're completed with the third glazing, which is the darkest darks, then we just touch up here and there and we're finished. So let's take a quick break and we'll come back. We'll get our third glazing, which is our darkest darks, and that will be in the foreground here. These buildings here in the foreground. Okay, we'll come right back. Hey, and don't forget, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, thumbs up too. Hey, give us a thumbs up here. We're doing great work every week, doing these exciting paintings. If you don't like it too, thumbs down. This way I know maybe you don't like some of the paintings we're doing. I'd rather know if you don't like them. This way I can maybe do more of the paintings you do like, okay? So always thumbs up or thumbs down, and as well, of course, please subscribe. It was a great channel here we have. We always putting out new videos every week, 1 or 2 videos every week, and we're going to keep everybody learning and growing in our watercolors and learning great new information. Okay, so we'll come right back and we'll start our third glazing. Okay. All right, you're back. You've made it. You're sticking it out. You're trying these new paintings out with your square brushes, and you're going to be amazed at how exciting of a painting you can create with like these, just some flat brushes, some square brushes here, the glazing technique. It's real simple, right? You just start out with your lighter washes and you get darker as you work. So, you do your first really light glazing, let it dry, 100%, let it dry. Do your second glazing. We just did our second glazing, let it dry. You can see the paper is a little bit buckled. You can probably see that maybe on the camera, on the video here. It's a little bit buckled, but really it's like 95% dry, 90% dry. So we can work on this. This is fine. If it's a little bit buckled, that's all right. If you don't feel you're comfortable working on some buckled paper, then you got to let it dry even more until it's more, the paper flattens out a little more. But this is, pretty workable for me. I've, gotten used to working on buckled paper. As a watercolor artist, you know yourself, watercolor paper buckles. That's just a normal part of the process when you're working. Sometimes if you're doing watercolor paintings that have less water, you're not going to get the buckling on your paper. But when you do add more water and you're doing these glazing type paintings where we're using the glazing technique, you have to know you're going to get those buckling effects in your paper. So that's a thing where if you're getting the buckling in the paper and you're not comfortable with that and you don't like it because it throws off your brush work, super fine. Just let it dry until it completely flattens out. You might have to wait till the next day. So, either that or sometimes a blow dryer will dry out the paper enough that it flattens back out again. But sometimes it takes a little bit like an overnight type of thing where it'll flatten out completely back to a flat state. So that's something you have to figure out as you're the watercolor artist here. You know, I can work with buckled paper because like I said, I've been working a long time in watercolors. I kind of just tough it out and deal with the buckled paper. But sometimes if you're newer at this, you might not want to deal with that. It's a little tougher to paint when you have paper that's buckling on you. So you might have to wait till it dries, and that's okay. You can take a break and come back at it the next day. Or you can just say, I'm just going to go for it, and you can do it. All right, so now we are going to introduce another let's use our Robert Simmons watercolor brush. This might work out good for our foreground. So now we're going to do our darkest darks in our foreground, which is our closest area to us. And again, we'll kind of use our 3 wells here. We're going to stick with the blue cool colors in the center, our alizarin crimson here on the upper portion, and then our warmer raw siennas, raw umbers, raw siennas, a little bit of yellow ochre. That's fine. We'll also put a little bit of French ultramarine blue over here because we're going to go with a little darker dark with some raw umber like that. All right. So let's get into it. Let's do it. Let's do some, and again, have fun with this. This is the darker cornice here. Okay. I'll take some tissue, dry off the brush a little. And then I'm just going to do some darker dark. And all I'm doing is I'm thinking of windows. So now I'm thinking of windows. You can see it's a little wavy. Sorry about that. There we go. I add a little bit of water to my palette. French ultramarine blue. Add some more French ultramarine blue. Cerulean blue. And we're going to go one more like this. So now what I'm thinking of is windows. So, okay, there we go. Now, windows are rectangular. Okay. Now I'm going to take some of that raw umber, raw sienna, yellow ochre, warm colors, a little bit of water. I'm going back to my water bucket, getting a little water. And now I'm just going to splash on some warmer colors too. And besides that, let's kick it up a notch. Let's get into our palette here. Put a little bit of titanium white there. We could use Chinese white. Chinese white would look good too. Splash on some Chinese white or some titanium white. Give it a little bit of effect of some mist like that. Splash on some water. Look at that. Perfect. Okay, now over here, this is more middle distance. We're going to leave that over here. And we're going to take this and make it a little bit darker. Maybe let's get in and do some darker darks with some warmer colors. French ultramarine blue, burnt umber. we want some warmer color within the blue. If that makes sense, right? We don't want to just go all blue. It might look like a checkered tablecloth on here. So add in some burnt umber. And you can see here I went a little bit outside the lines. There we go. Let's do the same thing. Burnt umber, French ultramarine blue. And let's do this. Okay, and then some splashing. There we go. And take some tissue and just wipe up a little bit of the excess water here, like that. Maybe you blot up a little bit of paint. Okay, now let's keep moving on with our darkest darks. Same brush, the Robert Simmons. This is like a number 12, I guess it's called. That looks like about a half an inch, maybe, not even. Yeah, it's about a half an inch, I would say, for the size of the width of the flat brush. All right, now we're going to do the same deal. Let's go across, right across here with the darkest dark. Again, we're doing the cornice of the buildings, which is the very upper portion of the building at the top where the roof is. And we'll pick up some more darks, blues. And let's just keep the brush strokes even. You can see how I'm going even. We're thinking of windows. Windows are usually even as they go across the building. Like that. And then we go across like this. You can have fun with your brush strokes. Put in some warm colors too as well. We got on the warm or the cool colors, the blue. Now we'll put in some of that raw sienna, yellow ochre. Let's get some warm in there too. Warm and cool, all over. Warm and cool. Maybe even go with some cadmium red. Let's spice this up a little bit here. Our paintings, we don't want to make them dull and boring. Let's kind of give them some, especially close up here. When you're in the foreground of a painting where everything is close to you, you're going to see all the vibrant colors. As the distant buildings go into the distance, you'll see less vibrant, exciting colors. You'll see more cooler colors. It's in the distance, cool. Cool is distance. Warm is closer by. And this is some brick colors here. We have brick, cadmium red, mixed in with our other colors that we're putting on, and we have that. Let's put some cadmium red over here too. Over here too, let's add that in. So if we have cadmium red over here, we definitely want to have some over here. And you just put some in here and there, kind of like the brickwork. Like that. That looks pretty good. Splash a little bit on there. Maybe we'll put in some very fine details on the windows, but we'll wait for that till later. So that'll be our finishing ultimate details. We'll put in some window details, some grills on the windows here eventually. But right now, we're just concerned about getting the overall look of things, the bare bones of things, and then eventually we'll get to the details. All right, so now we have our foreground here and here. And let's use our darkest darks that we were using for, and we want to do that. Let's do this. Let's do this is on top of this building here, which is our foreground. So let's get the darkest darks in here too for our water tank. And let's make these also our darkest darks. And that's where I a little bit of details. And over here, since this building's in the middle distance, that's going to have some details, but not as much. So let's kind of go across here. We'll do some more of these details here. That's good enough. And we'll put a little more detail up there like that. Okay. So now we're seeing how we're building the layerings and the glazings of the painting. So we started out with the lightest lights, which is the sky color, and we did the whole painting that sky wash. Then we did the second glazing, which was a medium tone, a medium tonal value. A little bit darker, but not quite as light as the first wash. We did the whole painting with that, covering in and painting in all of the buildings. Now we're doing our third wash, the darkest darks. Third wash. Third wash is the darkest darks. These are the foregrounds. So let's keep working on our darkest darks. Once we're completed with that, then we can start working back into the painting again a little bit more. But we don't want to go too much back into the painting. We just want to, let's get all of our darkest darks now, since we were sensibly working light to dark, glazings. Now that we're at our third level, the darkest darks here, let's get these glazings in, and then we'll see how much more we want to do in the middle distance and the far distance of our painting. Okay, now let's do some windows here. And the more carefree we do these, the better. We don't want to go too perfect and accurate. Let's just get them in. Right? I think the more we do this kind of thing, haphazard, it's going to look better than trying to do it real accurate. So that's good enough. Over here we do the same thing. These maybe just a quick X marks the spot. We don't want to go too detailed. And this building's a little more, we have a little more fun with this one over here. Okay, good. This one's a little closer to us. This one's a little more in the distance, not a lot, but so we have a little more fun with this, and we don't have to get as detailed with this building, but this one here we're a little more. And you can see I'm just gonna more details on the windows. Just adding more lines really for the glazings and the grills of the windows, like that. Then maybe we add a little bit of, well, let's add a little green. Viridian green. Viridian green. Viridian always looks good when you're using red, and when you add some Viridian green with the red, that looks great. So we'll add some Viridian green here and there. Same over here. Viridian green over here too as well. That looks good. Okay. Now we have that foreground. Looks great. The darkest darks, that really pops. That looks great. All right, now let's go back and start working in to the middle distance. Middle distance, we're going to start going back in with the French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, kind of a little bit of a darker dark, but not too crazy dark. Okay, then we have the water tower here. And I'm using my needlepoint brush to get those real nice details. There we go. And now I'm going to do more windows here. Okay, and we have some titanium white splash on there with some titanium white. That gives us the nice feeling of some atmospheric conditions here, some smog along the bottom of the painting. Okay, now we'll go back. We'll do some skyscraper this is where we might be able to do I'm using a small wooden dowel. You could use a small piece of wood, whatever you might have. A ruler, you can use a ruler. Maybe we have a ruler nearby. Let's use that. Here's a ruler, a stainless steel ruler I have. And let's kind of put some lines on the skyscraper here. Let's use some blue here. You can do this freehand if you want. Maybe we'll do it freehand. You can also use this here like this. You just raise it up high. And so you can turn to the side. I'm going to turn to the side here. And so basically I'm turning my body sideways here and just a few lines like this. And then we do some lines, and then maybe we kind of just move some of these lines like this with some. We try to keep them we kind of do some dashed lines. That looks pretty good. I wouldn't do too many details on this. That's good. You could go with more details. You could take your time more. And I'm just doing some very light brush strokes there. And then some more windows over here. Then I just do some dots across here, more windows. Maybe we need some more middle distance. That's what I'm thinking here. We need a little more middle distance to break up the you can change up the design. I'll add some more alizarin, French ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, burnt umber. We'll make a little darker dark. And I'll make a building here in the middle distance. Cooler, more blue in this one, this building. And that kind of pushes that other building a little bit back. The skyscraper there, we want to make sure we... same with this one here. Let's make this one like that. So again, I'm improvising. I'm trying to push certain buildings back and bring these forward a little bit. So the darker I make these, the more they're going to look closer. Like that. There we go. And if you go over a few spots, you can just blot some stuff up like that. All right, we're back and up and running again. I don't know, my camera shut off a second or two ago. Not sure when it shut off, but we're going to just keep working on this here, and we're kind of getting to the point where we're pretty much finished here. We're actually, you can see I'm sort of I'm blotting up a few spots. And I found I actually went into my my drawers. I have drawers that I have all my brushes and paints in. I found this small. Flat brush. It's very small, and then we can get some details here. And here I'm just going to do some quick. And what I find is if you keep the lines straight across this way, level across this way, that's fine. And if you keep the windows just underneath the other windows above, then you're always going to be good. So I'm just trying to keep to that pattern. And then as I go this way, I lighten up. And we just kind of fade it in here. It gets misty down here. There's some atmospheric conditions here, some haze, some fog maybe, who knows. But it looks good, and just like that. We can add a little detail to the top of the building here. Since this building is in the middle distance, we're going to see more details here. And that building might have a penthouse for the elevator up here, like so. And then maybe another penthouse up here, like that. Okay, and then a little more darks. Just do some details at the top of the buildings, just to give it some more details. We want to have some, there might be some antennas and different things on the rooftops there. Same with this building here. This building here, we can go with super darks. And we just go right across. This building here, I say we can mix up between lights and darks. Let's take some of that titanium white. And we'll also put some lights here too. There we go. And we can also add some splashes to that. Couple little details with some darks there. Same with over here. And you kind of just go by feel. These are quicker, these details, because they're in the distance. We're not really focused on them too much. So I just go quick with these because they're the more distant buildings. And I think that's good. I think that looks fine. We could do a little more. Let's take a couple more darks here. We'll just kind of maybe do a few details closer to us. Like that. That looks a little better. Okay. There we have it. A beautiful cityscape painting. Buildings. We have mist. We have smog. We have atmosphere. We have our beautiful light to dark. We have our 3 washes, our 3 glazings, light, middle, and darks. As long as you have your light, middle, and darks, you're going to be fine. So I hope you're going to practice this and have fun with this. This is a great painting. You can actually use this format on large paper, or you can, do it on this paper here, which is like maybe 12 by 14. And we'll just carefully peel off the tape here. We'll get a more of a isolated view of what it looks like as we peel off the tape. And this would pretty much be how it would look if we matted it with a mat over top. And I carefully pull the tape off so it doesn't rip the watercolor paper. We're using Fabriano paper, excellent watercolor paper. I always use the best watercolor paper for you on YouTube. And the best tape, we're using 3M masking tape. We take our time, we pull off the tape, and there we have it. And then we zoom in. And we zoom out. There we go. All right, I hope we had fun with this. Give it a try. It's a lot of fun. It's exciting. It's the glazing technique, which we always, on my channel, you'll always see me doing the glazing technique, here and there. Not every time, but I do use this technique a lot. Have fun with this technique. Use it. It's a lot of excitement using it. The key is letting each glazing dry as you go. As long as you let each glazing dry, the light, let it dry, medium, let that dry, and then you go over the top with your dark, and you have it. It's a perfect, flawless technique to use for watercolors. Okay, and we'll see you on the next video. Again, hey, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. We're here every week making videos for you, and we'll have fun. We'll be back next week, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.